trying to follow the bouncing ball.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
You know, we're trying in good faith here on this program and to a certain extent on the radio on WPRI to figure out what's happening at Johnson's Pond. And I've got a lot of inquiries. People are sending me thoughts and concerns about whether or not there will be a summer at Johnson's Pond, a place in Coventry which is perimetered by some 600 homes-ish, and which is kind of a, known cool place in Rhode Island, one of the nicer waterways in Rhode Island, and a source of quality of life and recreation for so many. But I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if I'll get any closer to the answer to that question tonight, but I am thankful at least that we're able to now talk to lawyers on both sides. A couple of weeks ago, we had Stephen Angel, who was representing the town of Coventry as the solicitor in this particular matter. And we've been serviced in some ways by Patrick Dougherty, who is the lawyer for the rights holder to the pond. And he is here this evening to kind of respond in kind to some of the thoughts that ended up here 2 weeks ago. And you should go to WPRI.com if you missed the conversation I had with Stephen Angel about what's going on there. I would like to have both of them here. Mr. Angel respectfully turned down our invitation to share the desk with Mr. Dougherty. That might be something that we sell at $29.95 for pay-per-view. Not that they are not perfect gentlemen each, but when you get into this whole thing, it's a lot of they said, they represented. I don't know what they're talking about. We went there. The judge said this. No, the judge actually said this. And for us, you and me, it's kind of like, all right, we'll do our best. So here's a headline from a couple of weeks ago that began our engagement, at least on the show here. A federal lawsuit was dismissed. This was a lawsuit that was levied by the Soscia Holdings Company, the rights holder to the pond, against the state DEM and other parties, I guess the town too, I'm not sure. But the essence of this is that the state legislature put a law together that more or less says the DEM runs the regulation on waterways like this. And it's been long kind of the position of Soscia Holdings that the legislation was actually written for them. The legislation was written for all these kinds of waterways, but frankly, I haven't found another waterway that's akin to this kind of a problem with the dam and all the things that are going on. So that's number one. And I'll give you a little flavor. Earlier in April, there was a package that Channel 12 put together. Without giving you context, I'll let it rip, and then I'll let Pat Dougherty give me some context here.
Town officials say this recent federal ruling is a battle won, but the war over Johnson's Pond is far from over. 30 days. That's how long Soscia Holdings, the owner of Johnson's Pond water flow rights and dam, has to comply with the Rhode Island Department of Emergency Management's order to maintain water levels at a high enough level. But
we're not waiting 30 days.
That's because Soscia's lease with the town expires this weekend after failed negotiations.
He wanted $100 million, and when that didn't work out, he wanted $61 million. I want to be an Olympic athlete. Let's see who gets lucky first.
Town solicitor Stephen Angel says they're willing to further negotiate the price to buy the dam, but it has to be much lower than what Soscia is offering.
There's one reason and one reason only for someone to find themselves in an ownership position of this dam other than a governmental entity, and that is to put a gun to the head of this municipality to get them to pay some ransom price for it. That's not going to happen that way.
Soscia requesting the town to clear any docks, boats, and other apparatus or structures on the pond by the end of the month, or else the town would face even more legal battles. But Angel says Soscia hasn't asked the right group to accomplish that. So
life should go on as normal. DEM has jurisdiction to regulate the activities on that pond. And they want your dock removed, they need to go see RIDEM to do it. All this noise about the town regulating dockage is just that. It's noise.
Residents tell us they're relieved for now as the town asks them to be patient as legal battles continue. We reached out to Soscia Holdings for comment, but have not heard back at this time. Town officials will face a judge on Thursday to try to maintain the status quo on Johnson's Pond. Reporting in Coventry, I'm Alex Perez, 12 News.
All right, Alex. So again, time, context, perspective. Let's go wide here, Maddie, and get into it. By the way, who called who this morning? What sweater are you wearing?
I want to compliment you on your choice.
Well, listen, this is a very casual show, but this is getting a little ridiculous. It looks like we're on the same team here. Listen, I appreciate that you show up and you talk about your clients' issues here. Mr. Angel did. I had some trouble getting some representation from the town of Coventry up until a couple of weeks ago. But I've known Stephen for many, many years, and he's a talented, articulate counsel, and so too are you.
Thank you.
I know you guys have had some professional time together, and we'll leave that there. But when I characterize this as tough to follow, would you agree that it's tough to follow?
Yeah, I think I would most definitely agree, but I think part of the reason that it's so tough to follow is because of all the misinformation that's out there, particularly alleged actions on the part of my client, which have not been taken, which have been alleged to have been taken.
But you will agree, and you have on the number of occasions that you've met with me, that your client, and this is a general aesthetic thought here, that he hasn't befriended the community in an exceptional way.
That's an understatement.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So I think you've been very candid about the nature of your client. Yet you do get, both on and off the air, you get somewhat animated with me when you argue on behalf of your client, thinking that some things have been misrepresented, or he has been misunderstood, or his intent or his goals or what he's done or what he's alleged to have done is either untrue or misunderstood. So you earnestly represent your client. You're not just going through the motions. You think he's got serious arguments and a legitimate legal position, correct?
Absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken the case.
Okay.
Taken over the case. I didn't originally
Right.
file
You
it.
bought the case.
Yes.
When? About a year and a half ago?
No,
2 years
back
ago?
in, I think it was 3 years ago.
Okay, 3 years
Yeah.
ago. The lease that is now expired between the town of Coventry and Soscia Holdings was assumed by Soscia Holdings from the entity that they purchased the rights from, correct?
Correct. Quidnick Reservoir
A
Company.
Quidnick Reservoir Company that who people feel somewhat affectionate about because they didn't have any issues, they think, back then. You in previous shows have said, oh, wait a second, there's some revisionist history there. There's been up and down in the dam and all around. The levels have been up and down. It has not been pure bliss. And that if I understand you correctly, the Soscia Holdings hasn't manipulated the dam any more than the previous owner rights holder did.
I would say that the weather events have been more frequent and of more intensity such that my client had to manipulate the dam and the water levels in the interest of public safety and dam management, including flood prevention.
At the same time, he's also articulated things like you got to get insurance for your docks. You got to do some. There's a whole bunch of, I don't know, protections that your client has demanded from people who live adjacent to that water. Things that they did not have to deal with the previous ownership.
No, I think we have demanded those of the town of Coventry during the pendency of the lease. There were provisions in there that required the town of Coventry to provide an insurance policy where the owner of the dam and the water bodies, Johnson's Pond, was to be a named insured. They hadn't done that. They got by a motion due to
so he
past
wasn't
practice.
asking individual homeowners to
No.
insure their docks?
No, of course not. What the lease gave the town of Coventry, and one thing that has to be acknowledged here is for 40 years there were two specific leases that pretty much mirrored the provisions thereof for from a time period back in the 80s up through 2000. This year, March 31st, Easter Sunday. And it required the town to provide insurance. It required the town to do all the maintenance on the dam, including but not limited to certain identified items. And it also provided for the town to be allowed to regulate access to the pond and to promote recreation on the pond. Recreation in a mill pond, which is what Johnson's Pond is not allowed as a matter of right to any adjacent owners. There are no riparian rights on the part of any party that
In other words, somebody who bought a house there with a tradition of being able to put their boat out and do some swimming did so kind of on a fly, or kind of on habit, not with something that says, I bought this house, I have a right to recreate on this water.
Well, they had a right because the town had paid for that right for its citizens for 5 decades. I mean, there was an agreement in the 70s, and then there were 2 leases going from the 80s up through 2023 or 2024. And so it was,
so the town's agreement with your client enabled people to count on those recreational and quality of life.
that was a specific stated purpose in the multiple leases that were entered into between Quidnick and the town of Coventry.
And you assumed that lease.
Yes,
with
correct.
the acquisition, with the purchase. And now that the lease has expired, and it expired at the end of March, correct?
Correct.
There is no agreement.
There's no agreement.
It doesn't, and there's no
right to recreation.
And there's nothing in the lease that says, upon the expiration of the agreement, status quo until a new agreement?
No, none whatsoever. There were some provisions that, in the event that a major repair had been required, and if the parties couldn't agree, then there was some reversionary language, but that never was.
Does your client
implemented.
want to continue and build a new lease with the town?
Not under those terms by any stretch of the
What's
imagination.
wrong with the current terms?
Well,
or the current expired terms?
Well, the town didn't comply with them. The town keeps going out in the public
Meaning
and
the
saying,
maintenance you say they didn't do.
Yeah, absolutely.
The insurance you say they didn't cover.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. And also properly regulating access to the pond.
If the town said, okay, listen, we'll be better.
Well, we'd have to grab some kind of ironclad provisions that I would be happy to draft.
Give me the objective answer here, because I trust you to do this. Does the town agree with you?
No.
That
on anything?
No. Does the town agree with you that they didn't carry the proper insurance and that they didn't do the required maintenance? If Stephen Angel was standing here, would he go, okay, listen, we submit to that?
I don't think he would. I don't think he would.
And why do they not see it the way you see it?
Well, they're advocating for their client, and I think part of obviously this is a huge political issue. You nailed it right on the head during the first time that you were talking to Senator Raptakis and Mr. Lemoy from the Johnson's Pond Civic Association, and then when I was here as well. This is a political issue for sure. I think that
political for who?
Well, for the people in Johnson's Pond, for the town of Coventry, and for my client. My client has been pilloried. And,
well, it's a financial issue for your client.
Well, yeah, but also they're being subject to politics, and there was a law passed.
Politics? Why? Not delivering on the insurance, you say, not delivering on the maintenance of the dam, and Matty just put up that video. Very good, Matt. If you could throw that overlay that you throw, this is work on the dam that's being done. I mean, what a mess.
Yeah, well,
right.
I have to tell you, this was an emergency measure. This followed a...
This is you?
Yeah,
this is your client?
This is my client. What they were doing, it was just merely plucking boulders out of the bedrock on which they were resting and placing them up to buttress a failing masonry wall of the spillway. And when that work was being done, there were 3.5 inches of rain forecast in the next couple days. The water was almost to the spillway level, and there was water jetting out of the face of the spillway.
So the dam is not constructed to handle, I don't know, modern weather, is what you're telling me.
No, it was constructed, but it was constructed 150 years ago.
Meaning it needs a major upgrade.
Well, it needed maintenance, and it needs a lot of restoration.
And who is responsible for that, according to your client?
During the time period that the lease was in effect, the maintenance was the responsibility of the town of Coventry. They failed miserably in that.
And why don't they agree that that's the case?
Because they have a legal position to defend, and they have a liability, and I fully intend to pursue that liability in an existing lawsuit.
Finding an insurance rider is as simple as going to a file and saying, "Here's the insurance rider."
Yeah, there were changes. What they settled back on was, well, we have insurance through the Rhode Island Interlocal Risk Management Trust that will allow you to be indemnified by us on our policy.
Meaning we got insurance our way.
Yeah.
You want insurance a different way.
According to the terms of the lease,
All
which
right.
stated a policy naming the landlord as the named insured with a direct relationship with the insurance company. There was no such policy when my client came into possession.
This is a 4-hour show. We'll be back for the final, I don't know how many minutes we have left. Stay with us.
Last summer, we sued Soscia Holdings. We sued him based on at least 12.5 notices of default that were sent to them. They're upset with us. By
The town?
yes.
Not
By the team. By our team.
Not DEM.
That's correct.
And those notices would be about compliance with the lease agreement
Correct.
that you have?
Correct.
Which is now since expired.
Correct.
Okay, that's Stephen Angel, lawyer for the town, a couple of weeks ago. You want to take 2 or 3 minutes here real quick, and then I want to get to the bottom line, which I think is the bottom line for all of these conversations in our final segment. You say there's been some assertions made publicly about your client and his behavior, his comportment there at the Johnson's Pond that are not true. Run through them as quickly as you can.
Quickly as possible. The town, in a press release and a statement that was released on April 3rd, stated that my client had taken actions to initiate in extensive, unwarranted, unpermitted excavation of the spillway and other structures in and around the dam. False. My client has not touched those structures. The only thing they did was pluck boulders and buttress a failing masonry wall on the spillway to prevent a catastrophic collapse and failure of the dam. In addition to that, even the Attorney General made a representation in an attempt to get an emergency conference with the court that my client had commenced bulldozing of a part of the dam and spillway. That's false. That never occurred. The fact that an excavator was there, it didn't mean that they were digging anything out of the riverbed, not touching the dam itself. They were using an excavator with a bucket that has something called a thumb on it, and they used that to grasp boulders, pick them up, and buttress masonry walls so that the dam would not collapse. So we haven't been ordered in the fashion that other people have said. We were never ordered not to touch the dam in any respect. The order to cease and desist was a wetlands violation.
But you operate the dam. You operate the dam, but the town has to maintain the dam.
That was always the case with Quidnick on down.
Can I just say from a layman's point of view, ask the question, who's the idiot that put this lease together?
Well, it certainly wasn't me, and I'm happy to say that, but I'm working.
Why would there be split responsibility between operating a dam and maintaining a dam?
Because the primary purpose of that dam and Johnson's Pond was to provide water flow in a controlled fashion to the mill owners downstream that were members of Quidnick Reservoir Company. All the mills on the south branch of the Patuxent River benefited from the water and the flowage from Johnson's Pond down through the south branch. So no matter what, the town was never allowed to regulate the flow of water. It was only to be granted levels of water in the reservoir to allow for recreation. However, that was subject to the provision of minimal stream flows downstream so that the mills could still benefit from the use of that water, as well as the ecosystem downstream in the south branch of the Patuxent River. It would not be disrupted and would be allowed to flourish.
All right, when we come back, the question that most people just want to hear, is there going to be a summer at Johnson's Pond? And ultimately, what is the big solution? Stay with us. All right, well, that doesn't look like a place to swim, but you wouldn't be swimming on the dam anyway. To the left of that is the body of water that we're talking about here at Johnson's Pond. Attorney for Soscia Holdings, the rights holder. First of all, is your client happy that he bought this deal a long time ago?
Well, I think they're still happy with the purchase. They just didn't understand the extent of the vitriol.
Did they buy it with
fallout.
the intent of hitting it rich and holding the town hostage in order to be able to ignore some kind of big payday?
I don't think that that's the primary cause or primary basis for it. I mean, just as 2 weeks ago, I was approached by an attorney for a venture capital firm who was inquiring if we wanted to sell it. So there are many economic.
What was the answer? Maybe.
Depends. Give me an offer.
Money talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you, a third party coming in here isn't going to help the town of Coventry, the DEM, the state of Rhode Island, the residents around there. There needs to be an entity. But let me ask you the ultimate question, and that is there going to be listen, you don't have a crystal ball. I get it. And you're just, and I say this respectfully, you're just a lawyer, right? But do you think there will be any formidable recreation on that body of water this summer, as it has been in the past, given the current status of the controversy?
Well, it all depends on a couple of factors. Number one, you know, we've had a very difficult time getting an engineer retained who wants to jump into this political frittata. We have a proposal that we've been...
Or some would say, watching Who Wants to Deal with Your Client.
And, well, not only that, but also who wants to give the bad news to the people on the pond, that the water level has to be dropped in order to enable a stabilization of the spillway and making the dam safe again. So it really depends. Right now, the water level is 46.5 inches below spillway, and there's still water getting ejected from the spillway wall. So there's definitely fissures that have been undermining the protection of the
So we've
dam
evolved
against water.
now into an erosion situation where you think it's safety versus recreation.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Meaning, and other towns, communities are dramatically affected by a blow of that dam.
Well, that's by the DM's very own classification of it as a high hazard
How
dam.
would you characterize your relationship with the DEM right now?
Well, I get along with Tricia Quest. She and I she's very professional. We fight like hell.
Over what?
Well,
I'm trying to figure out, is the state with the town? Are they with you? Who are they with?
Well, no,
I got to get the DEM here. There's a note. Let's note to
no,
Stacy.
we
We're
both
gonna do that.
advocate for our clients. You know, we vigorously advocate. But I respect her, and I believe she respects me.
What do you think the DEM's position is overall, whether your client is a good actor or not?
Well, I don't. I think the jury's out on that. You know, I reached out to DEM at the inception to try and share information and get them involved right away when it came to our attention that we had some serious problems and the dam was in progressive failure at the spillway. I was integrally involved in facilitating exchange of information and arranging a meeting with them, getting them down to the dam to see with boots on the ground the exact conditions that we were talking about. But I would like a little bit more cooperation. They issued an immediate compliance order to order us to do things that we were already doing.
I got 30 seconds. The ultimate thing is to buy your client out. Are we talking $160 million wants?
No.
Or is eminent domain going to run you guys out and you're going to be sitting on the sidelines wishing that you had negotiated?
No, we'd be happy to negotiate, but the town, you know, I mean, the Johnson's Pond Civic Association lawyers calling my clients thugs, you know.
Yeah, but the check's not going to.
Yeah,
the
well,
check
no,
did-
it
you
doesn't
know,
matter.
it-
It's
it-
not
it-
100. It's not 160 million. It's not 100 million.
What
but-
is the number?
Well, I'm not at liberty to say that, but there's a lot of creative ways of arriving at a number. They could simply create a dam district, negotiate a buyout, float a bond, and they can have whatever they want.
Yeah, well, honestly, regardless of what you think about the attorney's representation, that is the solution. That is. What the number is anybody's guess. Thank you.
Thank you.
Final word. The attorney's right. You know, I've hated these fire districts. They got plenty in Coventry, by the way. Create a dam district, make a deal, and end this fiasco. See ya.